this whole new thing about this market about selling exploits. So good afternoon. My name is Soto, and I am with I am part of the board of Hackerspace called Hack Miami. I worked at the security emergency response team at now Akamai Technologies. I used to work for Prolexic. We were acquired by Akamai Technologies not too long ago, and I worked there as a senior security researcher. What you're about to see is kind of a compilation of things that I've seen in the field and while performing my work. Obviously, I have obfuscated a lot, and I won't get into details. But the bottom line is, during my tenure as a security professional, I have researched a lot of what you would call what would be the implications of active defense or cyber weapons and cyber war. Not too long ago, people would laugh at cyber war. People would say that there were no such things as cyber weapons. People say that active defense was ridiculous, that there was no need to respond, or pretty much saying that an active or a preemptive attitude was preposterous. I was actually an advocate of a preemptive approach, but like the president says, my view has evolved. After doing some research, I have found that it's not that easy, and there are some serious implications when you are in the front lines. And if you are an infosec professional and you're a civilian, you are in the front lines, and we're about to talk about that. So my talk is about the civilianization of war and the paramilitarization of cyberspace and what the implications are for infosec professionals. I also came up with a proposal for collaboration. We're going to talk about that at the end, but I'm going to present you with some facts, and then of course you have your own opinion. If you know me or you had seen me before on DEF CON, I participated in DEF CON Sakai talks last year and the year before, and the panels were about cyber weapons and Second Amendment and infosec research. At that point, we really have an aggressive posture of what to do, how to respond in the case of an incident. But again, like I said before, my view has evolved, and I'm going to show you why. It's not that easy, it's complicated, and we are sort of in a limbo right now. So let's start. First of all, let's define war as the classic concept, right? An act of violence intended to compel our opponent to fulfill our will. That's close with, and that's the classic definition of war. The classic definition of war also isolates where it's a civilian person and a military person. A person that's not in the armed forces or police, law enforcement, is civilian. Military is obviously the armed forces. So what has happened? We live in a country that is, militarily speaking, is the power supremo. And I didn't create that term. That's David Kilcullen. If you know who David Kilcullen is, he's the master of the counterinsurgency manuals. And he was one of the advisors of Petraeus in Iraq. So basically, America is the power supremo. There is no other country in the world, militarily speaking, that can face us or be one-to-one through us. This was seen a long time ago, and actually it has modified the way the conflicts and some of the events in the world have unfolded. So again, I did not create the whole power supremo thing, and don't get too excited. We're going to revisit that at the end. But basically, you'll see things that the BLA the concept of unrestricted warfare. That's around 1999. I suggest everybody to read this paper. These are two colonels from the PLA that came up with this idea of pretty much everything goes. And in that everything goes, they focus on the cyber aspect of warfare. We also have the kind of interstate wars. The reason is simple. They can't match us militarily. They really can't. So what you see is a number of regional conflicts, a number of insurgency, a number of confrontation, what you would call non-combatants, which at times they're called terrorists. All right, so we have a bunch of regional conflicts. We have a bunch of situations where even though states may oppose us, they will not face us one-to-one, simply because they can. Right? So that's where the concept of the PLA unrestricted warfare comes from. They pretty much said, we will never be able to catch up with this guy. We are 10, 20 years away in technology. Well, we might as well use techniques and take advantage of, for example, the cyber domain to hurt these guys or defeat them in battle. So we have other concepts that approach that. I don't know if you guys have read Thomas P. Burnett, where he talks about Leviathan and sysadmin. And here's where comes the involvement of civilians in the theater of war. This comes because of the adoption of information technology. The adoption of information technology in the military has brought a lot of civilians into it. As we can see, there's a growing direction as of now of, like I said, a decline in interstate wars, and there's also a growing role of civilians in things that might be related to a theater of war, and we'll see that in a minute. Okay, so as I was saying before, this is actually a quote from Colonel Lian, and I'm sorry, I can't pronounce that, from Unrestricted Warfare in 1999. This is a doctrine from the PLA that says, that pretty much they will take advantage of any domain, including cyber, to exercise either mitigations or exert power on an opponent that they see they cannot match on a strict formal conflict. So with that in mind, as our opposing powers see that violence and war can be applied to the internet, technological violence obviously involves the internet. So you will use the internet as a means to get advantage of over adversary countries. You will steal intellectual property. You will exfiltrate data, espionage. You will take essential services. You will deny, degrade, destroy the ability of an adversary to provide essential services via aggressive digital attacks, and we'll see that in a minute. And you will exert power by amplifying the effects of hostile actions. You can either blackmail or extort, or you can also infect millions of hosts with malware or spyware, and I will talk about that at the end as well. So consider this. The security and effective operation of the U.S. critical infrastructure, including energy, banking and finance, transportation, communication, and defense industrial base, rely on cyberspace, industrial control systems, and information technology that may be vulnerable to disruption of exploitation. Cyber threats to the U.S. national security go well beyond military targets and affects all aspects of society. And this is an absolute truth. We're about to see the 16 items that the Department of Homeland Security considers critical infrastructure. So effectively, national security is redefined by cyberspace. So here it is. So as you can see, this is what the Department of Homeland Security considers critical infrastructure. And probably all of you work in it, at one point or another. So you have the chemical sector, you have communications, you have dams, you have emergency services, financial, IT, transportation services, commercial facilities, defense, industrial base, energy, food and agriculture, nuclear, water, waste and water. Now, do you see anything related to DoD there? Are there people from DoD at your company? No, right? Do you think you will get attacked by an opposing power? Okay. Well, there you go. You're on the front lines. And that's the point of this talk. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you include the ports and airports and stuff?
Yeah, I believe they are on. Yes. Yeah. So this is yeah. I took this from action from DHS. So this is if you are any way related to these sectors, you are in the front lines, right? This is called critical infrastructure. So here's a quote that they actually use at the Unrestricted Warfare. Every citizen is a soldier. And they seem to have a better grasp on how to approach cyber when it comes to approaching attacking us. They don't look at it as a way of, how can I say this? They don't think it's unfair to hack us. They don't think it's unlawful to get advantage through either exfiltrating large numbers of intellectual property or stealing our creations or hacking our industrial base, and they're copying their stuff and then beating us in the market. Besides this, like for example, I'll give you an example. So some of the things that the Chinese are doing is they basically go to countries, they find out what the bid is. The bid is financed by the government. And it's financed in a way that we will never be able to match their price. And that's how they are gaining advantage, by getting all these deals, mostly on critical infrastructure. And that's happening right now. Okay, besides that, we also have the paramilitarization of cyberspace. There's an increase of proliferation of hackers for hire, hacktivists, and what I will call digital insurgents. Some of these digital insurgents may look like they're hacktivists, but they are not hacktivists. And I'm asking you, if you're a person that looks at open source intelligence, I want you to look with detail on certain things that happen to certain countries and certain actors that will pretend they belong to hacktivism. They will tell you they're anonymous. They will tell you they are from whatever. They are not. There are a number of growing groups that are effectively attacking other countries, including us. And there's a trend mostly in North Africa. And you will be hearing a lot about these groups in the future. But basically, what we're about to see is the transferring of what you would call guerrillas in the late 60s or 80s into cyberspace. This is already happening in some other places. It may not have gone public yet, but it will at one point. So, a little bit of what I use to understand this is I base my research in the cyber threat taxonomy. You have the tier 1 and tier 2, which is exploits that are pre-existing and known to vulnerabilities. This is like going to exploit DB, right? You go to exploit DB, there's an app, there is an exploit, and basically you execute it if you know, and most likely you will get a shell or the exploit will go successfully. Then you have the tier 3 or tier 4, which is people maybe like some of you that are pen testers, that are vulnerability assessment people, who will poke a little bit more than just the public known vulnerability, and then you tend to find stuff. And then finally you have the tiers 5 to 7, which creates vulnerability that using full spectrum, and usually this is what we call the 0 days, the APTs. These are people that goes beyond. of what is public and what is already known. And what this is happening, and I'll go back to it in a minute, I wanted to give some examples to some of the cyber war examples of conflict in cyberspace. So you have Estonia, you have Stuxnet, you have Shamoon, and then you have It's Okay No Problem Bro. It's Okay No Problem Bro has to do with the financial institutions in the United States. This is a campaign that almost extended for 2 years, and that involved the financial institutions of the United States, and it was actually focused on a country in the Middle East. There are also numerous incidents that I will not name, but that had to do with the verticals. I can tell you one thing, this stuff is public. There's many things in other verticals and sectors that is not public yet, where they have already tried to apply the same logic, the same procedures to affect us as well. Other verticals such as communications, such as power, and many others. I would probably say that any of those critical infrastructure sectors have been probed and evaluated for a possible vector of attack against us by opposing powers. So, this is the definition of an existential cyber attack. So, let's go back for a minute. You have 16 sectors, you have a dependency on cyberspace, and then we have the concept, right, along with what the actors can do in the taxonomy of threats, and then we come with this definition, an existential cyber attack. This is actually, I took this from the Department of Defense Science Board report. And basically what it says is that an existential cyber attack is defined as an attack that is capable of causing sufficient wide-scale damage for the government, potentially to lose control of the country, including loss of damage to significant portions of military and critical infrastructure, which we talk about, power generation, communications, fuel and transportation, emergency service, financial services, etc. So obviously our government is aware that this can happen. And it has shown you, not only has shown you the categories of actors and what they do, but also the sectors that can be targeted. So basically, this conflict brings InfoSec civilians to the front lines. The current state of affairs has no framework that guides InfoSec professional. Basically, the closest that you have is CFAA, which is the Computer Fraud Act, which basically they can get you in jail for anything. Okay? You write a Python script that download PDFs, you go to jail. I went to a conference in San Francisco where a botnet was taken down in public. This happened on my view. And the company that did it, awesome for them. Actually, I thought that was great that they actually took down the botnet. But again, in Hack Miami, we've been told by the feds that if we hack live, we'll be prosecuted. And where does that come from? From the CFA, right? So the current state of affairs, the status quo on the law that we have on computer fraud and crime is inadequate for this, because it puts InfoSec civilian professionals in a very uncomfortable place where you can be prosecuted. It almost sounds like it goes to if they like you or not. Right? You go and scan the entire internet, but your name is so-and-so, they won't do anything. But if you're John Doe, you might be prosecuted. I don't know if you guys are understanding this, because this has happened, right? There are examples, examples of this. So then we have two things that are very important. The Title 10 of the United States Code, which is DoD military operations. You had Army, Navy, Air Force. And then you have the Title 50 of the United States Code, which is the intelligence connection. You have NSA, DIA, CIA, which are sort of civilian agencies. And the civilian networks fall under DHS. Now, this is what happened. For most of us here, we fall under the red. If you are a corporation or a residential, you're on your own. There is nothing that says you can respond, you can block, or what is the procedure? What should you do if there is an incident that you need to act upon, right? So basically, if for any reason we had to respond, if for any reason we were attacked with a certain vector like a botnet or a DDoS attack, the keystrokes have actually to be executed by military personnel. You cannot respond. It's unlawful. And I'm going to get even deeper into this. All right? Remember, I used to tell you that that was for responding. Right? So in this context, the war is no longer just military business. And that's what I'm trying to say here. This is something that I'll talk a little bit at the end, but basically we can't ignore this. It's a reality. If you work in any of these 16 sectors, you're on the front lines. There's nothing you can do. You either face it, or you don't deal with it, and it's part of a bigger thing that eventually affects us all. There are no rules of engagement. There are no clear channels of communications, no clear procedures or disclosures of such incidents. Reaction and prosecution is based on value. So usually, if you ever, I don't know if you have relationships with or talk with the federal agencies, mostly they will tell you, hey, how much are the damages? Because if not, we can prosecute. But my question is, what if that malware is part of a bigger campaign that is coming, that is about to come, or that is happening already? So because there are no numbers, you can't prosecute it, you can't look at it? That is very dangerous. Not only that's dangerous, it's leaving you exposed, not only as a corporation, but as a citizen. So because we don't have a framework to act, we are exposed, we're in limbo. Because it's not like you can go and take the botnet. It's not like you can go and research it. They will tell you, you can't do that. We'll prosecute you if you do that. So then we go to what we'll call the fog of war. The fog of war, which is a term that is, I'm trying to make an analogy of what's going on. And we can read it. It's a term that seeks to capture the uncertainty regarding one's own capability, adversary capability, and adversary intent during an engagement, operation, or campaign. That's basically what we are into. We don't know what to do. We don't know who to call. The damages are based on financial value. So if there is no real financial value, they won't prosecute. They won't escalate. But what if that is just a piece of the puzzle? Right? And I'm talking about commercial sectors. I'm talking about the DHS 16 sectors that I just told you. We're not even talking about homes. Your grandma with Windows XP. Right? So that's something that you gotta consider. And then something that I want to talk about is that you see there's countries like the UK that they have these porn filters. We'll talk about the porn filter at the end and what that means for us as Americans. Also, part of this fog of war, and it's also part of the InfoSec community, there is this, at times, perception that the government is looking the other way. So you got all these companies that they go public and say, oh yeah, I got a 0-day for Word and Excel, and they're worth between $200,000 to $500,000. And based on the current law that we have, depending on how those exploits are used, they are prosecutable. So there are no clear limits on how we're using things. Either we are responding, or either we're going to do certain things, or either we don't. But based on what we have right now, really there's nothing else to do. My own opinion is, based on the CFA, if I respond, if I scan, like for example, in China, an nmap is considered a hostile act. So I can be prosecuted for that. So basically, I am not protected as a civilian. So I am forced to either call the authorities or do nothing. Because basically, with the current framework that we have, you can't do anything. All right, so this is a good question. You have a bunch of vendors. These vendors sell zero-day exploit. Some of these vendors are known for doing government work. So are these vendors like KVR or Blackwater? Is that what's happening? It's sort of what's happening with this, where we had these civilian contractors where they do certain work that the government would not do, but then they have plausible deniability. So are infosec contractors the equivalent of a Blackwater or the KVR? And in case you wonder, because I don't know all of you, but you probably wonder, are you a mercenary? Right? Because basically, if you are doing operations that include aggressive, include offensive, breaking, penetrating, you might be considered a mercenary. Why? Because you're not part of the military. And you're not part of law enforcement. You see where I'm going with this? Okay, so in case you wonder, here are the 6 factors that will classify you as a mercenary. You have a special recruitment, you have a direct participation in hostilities, desire for private gain as a primary motivation, neither a national party of the conflict, not a resident of the territory controlled by a party, not a member of the armed forces or party in conflict, and not sent by another state or official duty as a member of its armed forces. So for example, I took this from the Talent Manual. The Talent Manual was produced by NATO. And they did this because basically they concluded that international law is applicable to cyberspace. And I commend them for doing that because it's a positive step towards setting either rules of engagement or a framework that will permit how to act in case of conflict. So in this case, for example, you have a company located in state A that is engaged by state B to conduct cyber operation on its behalf and is armed conflict with state C. So long as the 6 criteria are fully met, its employees who conduct the cyber operations are mercenaries, and thus unprivileged belligerents. An unprivileged belligerent is a combatant, an unlawful combatant, that is usually a term to define terrorists. You can be protected by Geneva Convention because you're not a military and you're not a civilian. And this can happen if you decide to go bonkers and start attacking once you see an attack on your network. So that's a huge, huge, huge risk and liability. And this is actually real. This is happening right now because there are no frameworks that would allow civilians to collaborate either with law enforcement or military and have the right protections. So basically, a person that qualifies as mercenary does not enjoy combatant status. So, responding again, are infosec companies equivalent of defense contractors? The answer is no. Right? There is no legal framework that supports such collaboration. One of the things is expressly prohibited to contractors. Like I said, we talk about infosec companies developing 0 days or doing operations. Prohibited contract functions include actions that directly result in disrupted or destructive combat capabilities, including offensive cyber operation, electronic attack, missile defense, and air defense. I took that from the law of armed conflict. Even though contractors are entitled to self-defense, but that's not, self-defense is, oh yeah, we saw this, we're gonna respond. It's not that easy. Right, so some of the things that also contribute to this fog of war or confusion is what I call the curious case of going from classified to classified. And I'm sure this has happened to some people here. Basically, you're at your work and you find something and you happen to be worried about it, you happen to report it, and then it went from a simple incident to a classified incident. All right? This happens basically because, hold on. This happens basically because there is no collaboration for law enforcement. They don't tell you what they're looking at. And I will talk about this in a minute. They want the whole pie, but they don't want to let you know what they're doing. So this is actually, I talked to several colleagues and this has happened. The curious case of a classified or classified. How is it that you're doing your normal work and then your report ends up in the Bentley? Why? Because there's something that they have realized is bigger, is part of a bigger piece of events. But again, if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have clear procedures or guides, how would you know? Right? And if everything is based on dollar value, you may have found a piece of malware, but there is no loss. There is no, it's usually around $5,000 to $10,000. So nobody will report it. Plus there are obviously some reporting or disclosing incidents is kind of cumbersome. And some companies in the commercial industry, they simply don't want to disclose it because it's embarrassing, among other things. So there's a lack of communication between national security agencies and infosec professionals. So we're not putting the dots together. The line between civilians and military is blurred. In some cases, the biggest civilian responsibility in protecting critical, essential infrastructure services. So let's say things get to that point. You think that if they bring a convoy with guys in uniform and they say, sit there, go ahead and defend us. You think that's going to work? No, right? Who knows your network better than you? Who knows your systems better than you? Maybe instead of separating, instead of isolating, maybe we can collaborate and make it more effective. All right, let me, and like I was saying, the government wants it both ways. They won't brief us, yet they want us to identify and tell them what we don't know. It's a wrongful approach for government agencies focus only in commercial damages. The government cannot give you a computer and turn you into a cyber warrior in a boot camp. It's not that easy. I know they try, but it's not going to happen. They need to embrace the civilian infosec professionals. And again, as a civilian infosec professional, you cannot engage in combat. As a civilian, you are likely to fall under unprivileged enemy belligerent. And this term is used to refer to terrorists or participating in war, but outside the law and not protected by either Geneva Convention or law of armed conflict. So you're basically unlawful. You can go to Guantanamo, I guess. But it's obviously not a right place to be. So let's talk about this. The power supremo, as we explained it at first, is now being tested. So you see there are a series of incidents, and there are reports that indicate that by 2015, at least one of the major powers will be able to either rival or defeat us regionally. All right, that's a report that's out there. And I guess based on the latest reports, there is some of it. You might, at this point, have an idea where things are going. But that is something that was actually analyzed already. By around 2015, a major regional power will be able to match or defeat the United States of America, regionally speaking. And this will translate into the cyberspace. Right, so that's why I put this, we had all this history of exfiltration, of intellectual property. We have all this history of, we had these Chinese fighters that look quite similar to ours, including the Russian one. So those are just examples of what may happen. And then we have all these incidents where our civilian infrastructure is being probed by these opposing powers. So basically, I'll give you a little hint of what happened on 2013. In 2013, we had near critical levels of downtime of U.S. financial institutions. Almost around 249 hours of downtime. Yeah, this stuff has really not gone public. You can find it if you Google it, but this is how bad it got. Obviously, there's widespread IP theft, that's intellectual property. There's broad footprinting of our essential national infrastructure. Like I was saying, regional powers able to reach military level enough to defy the US around 2015. And this will reflect in cyberspace. Opposing powers seem to have a clear strategy, a framework for military-civilian collaboration. They also seem to have a good grasp of using cyber to counter military might imbalance. There are no cyber treaties. The Geneva Convention does not apply to cyber war, and even if forced, it will be nominally. So right now, if you read certain authors like Richard Clarke, for example, wants to have a cyber treaty, where we say, oh yeah, we're gonna limit the realm of cyber conflict to these limits. There's no such thing as that. It will never happen. And if it happens, it's nominal, because our opposing powers know that we depend highly on technology. So that would be stupid for them to sign a treaty like that. That's not going to happen. So maybe we can bring peace, right? Maybe we can have peace on the internet. And then this is an example of what happens when you sign a treaty, and you are misled by thinking that by signing treaties, there will be peace. There is no such thing as peace. They know, and they are very well aware of their capabilities and what they can do to us. They are already getting louder and more aggressive, and this will happen even more. So, what to do as an infosec professional? Well, obviously, don't panic. Become aware of your responsibilities and implications in your organization, not only locally, but nationally and internationally. Persist in security awareness training at your organizations, families, and communities. Government must embrace infosec civilian community, nurture it and protect it, not prosecute it. Our warriors are the hacker spaces. Prosecuting somebody that wrote a script in Perl or Python is stupid. Thank you. It's stupid. We are the ones who are going to help. We are the ones they need. They can't give you, like I said before, you can't give somebody an AR-15 or something equivalent in a computer and say, okay, now you are a cyber warrior. There you go. You got a boot camp. That's not going to happen. They're gonna have to rely on us. But in order to rely on us, there has to be a relationship where there is mutual collaboration and there are protections for civilians. Only through communication, collaboration, and cooperation will we be able to avoid this dots not put together. Government must clarify the cyber domain chain of commands and rules of engagement. I will get into more detail in a little bit. And please do not be a naval chamberlain. Being a vigilante is not good. Only organized community efforts will bring the attention of related government branches. Participate in a community and help military government understand cyber domain. It might be prudent, and this is an idea that I suggest, to reopen something like the Office of Civilian Defense, which was closed in 1945. Obviously, it doesn't have to be the same organism, but it can be something that is related to cyber, where there is a collaboration between civilians, law enforcement, and military, and I'm going to show it in a minute. Here. So as you can see there, we got a gradient, right? We got a gradient where we all get together. Government, law enforcement, infosec civilian pros, and military. Obviously, there are areas where we match. We gotta be able to find a point where we can collaborate and get away from all this limbo and confusing situation. So with that in mind, here are some of the points that the framework that I'm proposing. First, you gotta get disclosure procedures, rules of engagement, right? If you are attacked by this, and this is how you respond, right? Communication means how we're gonna communicate with either law enforcement or the military. cross-training with military and law enforcement. We can help them. We can tell them a lot of what we know. We are the main driver of research. Incidents must not be approached from the monetary perspective, and that's what I was saying. We gotta get away from that $5,000, $10,000, you know, if there is no value of it, then we won't prosecute it or we won't investigate it. InfoSec civilian professionals must be trained in law-borne conflict and Geneva Conventions. If we're going to engage, we need to be aware what is it that we're facing, what are our limits, and what is it that protects us. Chain of command when dealing with national security incidents. Who to call, what to do, and where to receive approval or denial of whatever actions we're going to do. And obviously, you have to have what is called in military escalation control and matching procedures. This does not exist right now. Basically, if you get attacked, some people will go back and hack back and delete the content or destroy whatever machine they're attacked from. Usually there are procedures where you escalate appropriately, and this needs to be established for the cyber domain and for civilians, because it's us who's seeing all this. It's not them. And obviously you have to have legal protections for InfoSec civilians that are engaged, and you have to, like I said before, you have to create an organization that oversees this framework. With that in mind, do you have any questions?
What's your view on InfraGard?
Oh, that's a good question. I am a member of InfraGard. I think InfraGard has some good things, but it ended up being simply open source intelligence. Like it was really not a true collaboration platform where you will find things that you can read in the newspaper. There needs to be a closer relationship, and probably part of that closer relationship will probably up the level of vetting, so they can probably rely or give you certain things that they can't right now because of limitations on disclosure and clearance. So that's also part of this. So you have to establish points of communication. There are some right now. There's things like Uptrust, maybe some people here are members of, where they tend to share collaboration, they tend to collaborate pretty good, and a lot of info actually gets distributed pretty quick. It's actually pretty good. You get a lot of actionable items. But it would be great if that, which is civilian, had also some collaboration from law enforcement and military. And what I'm trying to propose here is to dissolve those silos that we have in between, because I think we're missing the dots, and we are being reactive more than proactive. And if you actually, when you go back to my slide when you had the 16 sectors, there's no military there. How would they know? One of the other things, I talk about the poor filter. One of the things that I found curious when I was reading Richard Clarke's book is that he says that, unfortunately, to protect the internet, you're going to have to lose liberties. And losing liberties means putting DPI technology at the main points of access, aka the porn filter. That's what the porn filter is. It's deep packet inspection, where they're going to tell you, oh, we're seeing Zeus here. We got to block you. Oh, you got to install the antivirus. Does that sound similar as we got to touch you because you may have a bomb? Do you see where I'm going with this? If we're not proactive, if we're not able to approach the law enforcement or military, this is going to come. There's going to be an event that is so bad that we're going to get something the equivalent of TSA on the internet, and that will kill it. As soon as you put DPI on the main points of access of the internet, you kill the internet. There's no privacy anymore. They will be seeing everything. You understand where I'm going with this? Okay. So in the case of InfraGard, it is definitely a positive step, but we got to go further than that. And we got to eliminate the whole either $5,000 we prosecute or we don't care. That's actually my opinion about it. Yes, sir.
I find it curious that you use the word, is there, there will be no more privacy. I've got to be honest with you, someone who works in the field, and I've seen some of your work, why would you expect any privacy for the past at least 10 years?
Is this in reference to the disclosures about the NSA?
No. Just in your comment about privacy and the expectation in the future of privacy. Well, I would think at least 10 years ago I lost my privacy when I started using the internet.
Well, that's actually, you got a point. But the fact that it seems inevitable that privacy would die does not mean that I cannot hope for it, right? Even though what I'm saying is emotional, not rational, there's still some things that you can do to protect your privacy. And I am an advocate of privacy. I understand that the privacy is the last frontier of the individual. You are your privacy, that's you, that's your stuff. So there are certain things where I can understand that things need to be either disclosed or revealed, but part of the success and the libertarian power of the internet is the ability of people being themselves. And to be yourself, you had to have some sort of privacy. So once you put this DPI technology or porn filters, it's not a porn filter, they're just trying to watch what's going on. I mean, if any of you have ever seen Net Witness or whatever, that's basically what they're going to do. They're going to put it, they're going to watch it. Oh, yes, sir?
But that technology is being driven by policy. So you're putting that, like you'll put that DPI technology in response to policymakers calling for that. And also I had some questions about, like, when we see civilians on the front line, at what point are you able to respond? Meaning that if the government says, okay, now that cyber is a domain of warfare, and you're being attacked, your Second Amendment right is to use a weapon in response. At what point, if there's a threat, what do you consider an acceptable level of force that's been exercised against you to respond?
That's an amazing question, and I can answer it. 2 years ago, I did a presentation about Second Amendment castle law at DEFCON, right? It was very controversial. Some people think we were crazy. I'm from Florida, so we we don't have that problem about having guns. I remember someone from the UK said, "You guys are crazy. We just don't have guns in the UK, so that takes the problem away, right?" Obviously, that for us is inconceivable, right? But if you look at the possible implications, who are you hacking back? Who are you hacking back? And what happens if you hack back and you provoke an international incident? You understand where I'm going with this? I'm not saying that that's going to happen. Usually then we use either proxies, or then we use RVN, or a bulletproof, or whatever. Then we try to obfuscate. But what happens when you respond and if there is no escalation control, and you go and hack that hospital or a bank, and people lose money or people die? You see where we're going with this? There has to be procedures that tells you what to do in that case. And right now we haven't anything. You have to call in, and then it's their criteria if they go for it or not. And usually, for what I've seen, they tell you, are they losses, valuable losses? Is this over $5,000? No? Okay, we won't prosecute. But you don't know that. There are other things such as the executive order, not too long ago, the president got to shut down the internet. That isn't, in my opinion, the way I see that is in the case, let's say we have a botnet that infects Windows machines. There are millions of them. We cannot attribute who the attacker is because the attack comes from inside the country. The president then can go ahead and shut down the internet. You follow what I'm saying? Now, if you're in your home, if you are in your organization, and you are able to see signs that this may happen, why not bring it up and talk to them and see, hey, we're seeing this. Are you aware of this? Is there anything that we can do about it? So that's precisely the point of my talk. So yeah, that will be my answer. My answer is yes, you do have the right to do it, but the repercussions and the liability that you will fall into is sort of too great to try it. It's probably easier to just block it or let it go. Any other questions? All All right, well, then, thank you very much.